Welcome to the Tennessee Achieves Virtual Community Service webinar. These webinars are designed to provide you, Tennessee Promise students, with an opportunity to learn more about college success tips, careers in your potential field of study, and other topics we think you will find interesting while you are navigating your educational journey. These webinars will also help you complete your community service requirement while it may be difficult for you to do so at this time. A few housekeeping details before we get started. By logging in as a Tennessee Achieve student, we are able to track your attendance and how long you remain actively engaged during the webinar. Once you complete the webinar, you will automatically be given credit for 1 hour of community service. We will track how long you watch, and if you do not watch the webinar in its entirety, you will not receive credit. You do not need to complete the community service form for these webinars. Tennessee Achieves will log your hours for you. Tennessee Achieve staff and partners across the state are providing important insight and information we think you will find entertaining and informative. We hope you enjoy this new series of webinars.
Welcome to our Tennessee Achieves Virtual Community Service webinar, job shadowing webinar today about STEM fields and advanced manufacturing. I'm Graham Thomas. We are really excited that you decided to join us and learn more about these fields today. I'm really excited about this panel. Our panel today, we have some really esteemed colleagues in Knoxville that are going to talk to you about several different topics today. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it right over to them to let them introduce themselves. Tony, you're on the top of my screen, so we'll start with you. But everyone, you can just go in whatever order you like. If you'll just tell us where you're from, what colleges you attended, degrees that you earned, and what you do now.
Hey, terrific. Thank you, Graham. So I'm a professor at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and joint faculty at Oak Ridge National Laboratory. I got my Bachelor's of Science in Mechanical Engineering at Temple University before probably everyone watching this video was born. I also played football there, and yes, we wore helmets and shoulder pads. For graduate school, I went to the University of Florida. So I have Gator blood in me, but I'll always be an owl. So thank you. Joan, you want to go?
All right, I'll go next. So my name is Joan Bienvenue, and I am Vice Provost and Executive Director of the University of Tennessee Oak Ridge Innovation Institute. So I get to sit between the University of Tennessee and Oak Ridge National Lab. I think it's one of the best seats in the house. I get to see all the wonderful research and meet people like Suresh and Tony who are doing this great work across both spaces. So my background, I'm originally from New Hampshire, and I have an undergraduate degree in chemistry from Riviera University. I then went to the University of New Haven, where I did a master's in forensic science, and my PhD research at the University of Virginia in chemistry with forensics applications. I actually then went ahead and got an MBA because I needed to know a little bit about business to get into the kind of role that I'm in now, where I do sit in between and try to translate all of the work that's going on for people to understand it better and get excited about it.
Okay, I believe it's next to me. As a good afternoon, students who are listening to that, and it's a great pleasure to talk with my colleagues to you all. So I did my bachelor's in metallurgical engineering in India, and also master's in industrial metallurgy from a university, Indian Institute of Technology, and specializing in welding side of it. And then I was lucky to get a scholarship to go to England. And then I did my PhD in materials science and metallurgy at the University of Cambridge. And then after finishing that, I had again went to the other side of the world, to Japan, to spend 1 year as a postdoctoral research associate, where I was pulling atoms and seeing what they are. And that's a technique, which we'll talk about it later. And then from there, I came to this country in 1993. And then I became a US citizen in 2006. And then, so now I worked at both Oak Ridge National Laboratory and the Ohio State. And now I'm at the University of Tennessee, focusing on advanced manufacturing and also STEM as a senior advisor to provost and also vice chancellor of research. That's me.
Excellent. Well, thank you all again so much for being here. Let's jump right in. Suresh, we're going to start with you. What is STEM? So we hear a lot about STEM and why students should be going into STEM. So we'll start with, what is it as the first question? And then second, why is it important that students are studying these fields?
Okay, thank you, Graham. So a STEM is a shortened word for 4 words: science, technology, engineering, and math. Okay, so we use it, many acronyms we have. So we use STEM as a way to consolidate all the things which we do as a part of that. The science is asking question why this happens. So for example, yeah, so when I went to my England, I actually went to the apple tree where Newton actually sat down and then saw where the apple is falling from top towards him rather than going into space. And asking that question and then using tools available for you to answer that question. So many times you are also doing science. You don't call it science. And so please remember that every day you wake up, you walk around asking that question, why you are doing science. But we have a systematic way to distill that skills. And that's where you do a lot of biology, physics, chemistry, that's the science. And technology is building on that and coming up with the tools. For example, you carry a supercomputer. This is a technology, which is an iPhone. You can't see it right now, but that's actually a technology application of science also. Engineering is both using scientific technology to figure out something useful products. In your house is actually engineered. Your car is actually engineered. So it comes as a system together. For example, I'm holding a 3D printed object here, which is also an engineering went inside also. But all of them in the science and technology engineering, the foundational language we speak is the math. So ability to use math allows us to come to solution much quicker, and then we can generalize the solution so we don't need to reinvent every time also. So that's about, in a way, STEM. And the question is, why is this important? The STEM, each and every aspect which I talked about has become part of our life. Every time you are going to buy a car, and if you're going to repair the car, you can see that the STEM is playing a big role also. So we will talk about a few examples as we go along. And if you go down this pathway, you will get an opportunity to work in an industry, national lab, or become like professors like us, or become like a leader like Joan and take care of other students. And then also you can join government to dictate where the policy have to go for the future also. So these are the opportunities for you. Let me stop and pass it on to my colleagues.
Great, thank you so much. It's a really good introduction to our topic today. Joan, so you're at the University of Tennessee's Oak Ridge Innovation Institute. First question is, what is that? What fields fall under its purview? And how can students go to learn more about what you're doing and the fields that fall underneath the purview of the Institute there?
Wonderful. Yeah. So the Institute is really just a big umbrella. It's a big umbrella of STEM, to use the term that we were just talking about. So we're a group that was formed to take all of the wonderful work that was being done at a national lab, at Oak Ridge National Lab, which we have right here in our backyard, and the University of Tennessee, and all the collaboration of those two groups that were already working together on for the past 75 years on different science, math, engineering, technology problems, and solving problems together, put it all under that big umbrella and develop even more programs. So we're looking at education programs from kindergarten all the way up through graduate programs like the ones that Suresh, Tony, and I have gone through ourselves, building new opportunities for students to get engaged in math and science and technology development on the research side, but then also in the classroom and educational programs. And then tying it all together and working with industry partners for creating workforce development programs, which I'm sure Tony's going to talk about, ways to get engaged so that we can create the workforce of the future, that take students that might be listening today and get them excited about these technologies and these opportunities and this type of research, and get them ready for jobs of the future that may not even exist today. I know that Suresh, Tony, and I could probably all talk about jobs that we know of now that exist in our areas of expertise that didn't exist when we were students, and it's only going to change more rapidly as we go forward. As far as what areas, well, we have a couple of our advanced manufacturing and materials folks here that can talk about some of those areas, but really any science and engineering and math area that is of interest to both the National Lab and the university, and then the community at large, fits under the umbrella that we're building. So we're getting involved in data analytics. We're looking at computers and microprocessing and biological sciences and chemistry. It all fits in together, and it's all increasingly more tied together as we look at the way research and education is going right now. So, so we're a big welcoming umbrella of STEM.
Yeah, I've had the opportunity to tour the Oak Ridge facility before, and you go where they made the bomb, and that's what everybody thinks about. But there's a lot more going on there besides just the World War II history.
Absolutely.
Tony, let's go over to you next. Know that you are our expert in advanced manufacturing and machining. What are those fields, and why are those important for students to learn more about those?
Terrific. I'm going to answer that, but I wanted to build on something that both Joan and Suresh talked about, and it can be a sore point for students. They both talked about math. Oftentimes, we learn math independent of its application. And so we ask the question, why am I learning this? Why do I need to know algebra? And if somehow I mastered algebra, why do I need trigonometry? And if somehow I made it through that, right, why do I need geometry? And so on. Here's why. If I go to another country and I can't speak the language, I have a terrible time, first of all, communicating with the people around me, and second of all, doing everyday activities. Suresh said this, but I wanted to underline it. Mathematics is the language of science, technology, and engineering. And so for my students here, just let me encourage you, if you have a bad taste in your mouth about mathematics, try to change the way you think about it as a language that unlocks doors that are hard to get through otherwise. Okay, so your question was terrific. Well, maybe I should pause with that. Maybe Suresh or Joan want to respond to that.
So I agree, the language is important. For example, I have one of the example here. For example, I make a curve like this, a circle here. So you can make it into sine wave here. So it's all of them, I'm doing it. In fact, you can develop mathematical expressions. It's so simple to explain what is happening here. You just have to enjoy it. Don't fret about it, mathematics at all. It's just a language. You just have to be comfortable with that and have a mentor, somebody who can teach you to do it. Don't try to think that math is not my thing. Every day you can learn math. It's there, it's available. It's just a food, you just have to eat it. That's it.
And I'll agree with what you said, Tony, about the application space, which sometimes makes, without independent of the application, the math can seem intimidating, impossible, and maybe just too abstract to really make it something that's interesting for a student. And I know I certainly struggled with some of the math that I did growing up as a student all the way through college. And when I got into forensics and could see how math was applied to, say, the statistics of DNA analysis when you're trying to catch a criminal, or how it was used when we were looking at it, analyzing the flow in a microfluidic system as we're building devices. There's any number of ways that we use math in those systems where it made a whole lot more sense because there was a purpose for it. And unfortunately, a lot of times you got to get through those tough courses, those tough basic courses like algebra and trig and calculus to get to those applied spaces. But it is worth it. It is that language, that common language is incredibly important. And hang in there, I'll say, for someone who's probably never that great at math.
Yeah, I've heard it described as the only universal language.
That's great.
Okay, so Graham, you asked me about advanced manufacturing and machining definitions, essentially, and then why are those fields important? Why should a student think about them? So let me answer those quickly. So advanced manufacturing, there's lots of definitions. If you type that in Google, you'll find lots of definitions. Let me offer one here. I would define advanced manufacturing as combinations of new and existing technologies, including measurements, to improve the production of new and existing components. And wrapped up in all of that is all the STEM topics that we just talked about. Manufacturing does not happen easily, nor by accident. There's a whole lot of thinking and modeling and planning and equipment and control, and all these topics knit together into this advanced manufacturing ecosystem. Anybody want to add to that definition before I move on?
Please go ahead. That's good enough definition.
Great. Well, that's good because I call myself a manufacturing professor, so if I can't define it, I'm probably in trouble. Okay, so machining. Machining is actually my favorite topic in the whole world. So what is it? It is material removal to produce a desired shape and surface finish. So it turns out that almost everything that you touch during the day, at some point in its history, machining was involved. Joan mentioned that we do have training curricula that we've developed to encourage more students to consider machining and manufacturing as a career option. Right? You may not have thought about that. You thought, oh, that's not something that I want to do. If I'm going to college, I'm doing that to become a business owner or somebody that thinks about economic policy, or a doctor or a lawyer. There's lots of career choices you may have thought about. Manufacturing is parallel to all of those things. And so we've developed some training that encourage you, that gives you more information, that lets you say, what would I do if I had that job, and what would it look like? And so that online training that's available, we've also developed complementary in-person training to say, oh, I kind of like that. I'd like to learn more. So we have a 1-week training effort that lets you operate computer numerically controlled machine tools. They're like robots, right? Where I give it a computer program and then it executes the instructions that I gave it. And so part of that training is we build this thing right here. So Suresh is showing you some cool stuff. Let me keep it in front of my chest so you can see it. So we machine the components and then assemble those components to make an oscillating piston air engine. So as I put air in the back of this thing, it forces this piston out, which causes the wheel to rotate. And as the wheel spins around, the piston retracts, and then it extends again, and so on. This is very much like what's under the hood in your car. This is what makes the wheels go round and round. Everybody knows that song, right? The wheels on the bus go round and round. So that's it. This is how it works. We machine all these components. You can see that's a shiny surface. That's because of the quality of the machining operation, and so on. So the final question, Graham, was why? Because, as I said, virtually every item you interact with every day was manufactured. And joining that field, therefore, is not only rewarding as a career, but it's also important for the quality of life for you, your family, and everyone around you.
Excellent. So, Jen, I'm going to go back to you next. We've talked a little bit about what these fields are, talked a little bit about why they are important. So we've got students that are watching this that may be interested in going into a field like this. One, what can both our high school and college students be doing to prepare to enter a STEM or an innovation or advanced manufacturing machining field? And then kind of once they're prepared, what is it that, well, why don't we start there? And then I'll ask you a follow-up after that.
So I'll let probably Tony and Suresh talk about more specific skills that they think in these particular fields, but I'll answer more generally in STEM what students should be looking to do. And I won't give specific classes or specific experiences. I think there's a lot of different ways to get to what I'm about to say, but I think it's certainly starting with a natural sense of curiosity about science and asking questions and being engaged. And I know when I went to grad school and even undergrad, I was always feeling like I probably didn't know enough about science, and I wasn't sure if I really belonged in the classes that I belonged in because I came from a really small school, or I had this thing that I didn't think was good enough. But science is sort of this great wide open space, and if you come to it with the right attitude of curiosity, of being resilient, I think students that get involved in lots of different experiences, whether it's sports or through those activities, or in the classroom, or in theater, or in the arts, getting those experiences where you learn to be resilient, learn to ask questions, you learn to look at things in lots of different ways. All of those skills really help in the STEM field. They help you look at a problem. That's really what we're all doing in these different careers, is solving problems, and solving problems usually together. So being able to work as part of a team, work well as part of a team, and recognize the strengths of your colleagues and the different perspectives of the students that you might be working with on a project. those are the skills that I think are really important for good scientists and engineers and mathematicians and all the different disciplines that we're talking about here today. It's those kinds of experiences. Like I said, that I think you can get lots of different ways. Tony mentioned being a football player, and I know Suresh has had different experiences in India. Myself in running and some other things that I've been a part of. I think all of the students probably watching today can look at the different experiences they've had growing up and talk about ways that those experiences have shaped how they look at the world. And I think those are really the most important characteristics. And now I'm sure there's people that are specifically interested in advanced manufacturing and materials and those sort of questions. So I'll let Suresh and Tony talk about more of those specifics. But I did want to mention that there's, again, it's a big umbrella. There are roles for all different kinds of people in the STEM fields. It's not just people who love math or science. I've seen really great STEM folks that have backgrounds, like I said, in theater and the arts. So it really is a big all-encompassing umbrella.
So, Graham, thank you, John. Graham, you asked a question that how can the students in high school be prepared to the STEM, right? So I'm going to give you a little bit of personal example. That way it can appeal to our students who are listening. And if you go back to my own, like when I was in India, so I lost my dad when I was young. I was very not sure what I'm going to do and everything, but there were mentors who actually taught me that, look, it's not about whether you have something, but don't be afraid to ask questions. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay to ask stupid questions. It's okay. You are learning. Asking questions is your learning. So that is a first and foremost. So don't be worried about that. You need to know a priori something to get into science. Science is a journey. It's not an object. So please, anybody can do science, even if you're following arts and everything. For example, I show this. This is a Pythagorean cup. My daughter, who's actually following theater, actually she gave this as a gift. Many of you may not know what this is. If you pour above a particular limit, it'll self-empty it, because this is what Pythagoras made sure that the students don't drink too much. So actually, if you pour wine above a certain level, this whole thing will go out. The reason why my daughter gave this as a gift is that she's already known the language of science and everything talking about it and ability to ask questions. So it doesn't matter whether you want to be a scientist or an engineer or something. Don't be afraid to ask questions. That is number one. Number two, get your hands-on skills up. That's it. Anything you want to do it, try to do it by yourself. Don't try to figure out how to make a kite or how to make things. Use your skills with the normal materials around that. So those are the two things which I will ask our high school students to prepare. And I'll talk about how to get to the exam and everything, but this is the two basic attitude I was told to pursue. I'll stop.
I'm going to touch on a point that both Joan and Suresh raised, and I'm going to say it as an adage, right? So you probably heard this saying, curiosity killed the cat. That is absolutely untrue. If you want to succeed in STEM, advanced manufacturing, in the fields that we're discussing today, curiosity turned the cat into a superhero. Use your curiosity. If you don't understand, keep asking. That's what teachers are there for. And if you have a teacher that gets frustrated with your questions, keep asking. That's what they're there for. And eventually it'll make sense. Sometimes it's not the first time. That's true for everyone on this panel here. I didn't understand anything the first time I heard it. Usually I didn't understand it till I taught it. And so just be curious, keep asking, and you'll be able to advance in your career.
So I'll throw this next question out kind of to the whole group. We talked a little bit about what can students be doing to prepare to enter these fields of study. For students that are maybe in college and are about to graduate or earn a degree, or maybe they're thinking about transferring, what are employers looking for? I mean, I would assume, if you're going into advanced manufacturing, a certain skill set to operate a piece of equipment or something like that. But what, Joan, you talked about getting a business degree so that you could broaden your horizons in this specific role that you're in now. What kind of skill sets should students be thinking about that in the long game to ultimately find a job?
I think it's a lot of the same things we've talked about, frankly. You know, if you're coming out of an undergraduate program, you have a degree now, you've learned a lot, hopefully, about different things in a particular area, whether it's business or a scientific degree. And now you're looking to really apply them in a space. And employers are looking for students that are eager to continue learning, that are eager to continue to work closely with their with people in their work environment and build on the teamwork that's going on there already and bring their fresh perspectives. I hear it all the time from employers of I need young people to come in with ideas who aren't so stuck in their way of thinking, who aren't like me and Tony and Suresh that have our views of the world and we think things go a certain way. We need those students to go, no, why? Don't you guys know about this app over here? We're old now. We need fresh thinking and fresh ways of looking at things. So it's really jumping in there and being willing to take on more assignments, to stretch beyond that sort of interdisciplinary view of things. So like I said, I went out, my solution to not knowing enough about business was to go take a business degree, get another degree. I think there are ways to do that now that students are far more creative than I was and have far more opportunity when they're in their degree programs, when they're in undergrad, taking courses in other departments that might be outside. I had never taken a business class in my life and had to go take 8 undergraduate courses after my PhD. So just so I could take an MBA, but I think there's more opportunities now in programs when you're in college, and you should look for them to get those experiences, whether it's through internships or working a job during your classroom years. But I think there's a lot of opportunities to do that, so that when you go out into the world, you know what you like, you know what you don't like, and you know what you can tell employers you have to offer too. So Tony might have some, again, on the workforce development side, he might have some things to say on that too.
Yeah, this answer might be surprising. I think Joan and Suresh talked a lot about what it takes to get a job. Let me say some things that I hear from employers constantly about keeping your job. Number one, be on time. It's essential. There's no better way to lose your job than to be late. Number two, be open to instruction. Regardless of what you've learned, regardless of how smart you are, all of us have things that we need to continue to learn in order to be successful in our careers. And no one is going to try to step on your toes at a job when they tell you to do things differently. It's to match how it's done in that position. And so be open to instruction. And closely associated with that, be a listener more than you're a talker. And you'll do great in the professional culture. Thanks. So
I think I'm going to build on Joan and Tony. I think be perseverant also. Just keep at it and then don't give up easily. That's one thing I will tell you. And I'll give you a few case studies later as we go through this.
Tony, I'm going to go to you next. And talk about job opportunities in advanced manufacturing and machining. And, you talked about how it's everywhere, right? Like it's all in our lives, from our everyday products that we use, like a pen, to the really crazy advanced technology that maybe our military is using. So what kind of job opportunities are available for those students and as you advance your education? So like if you maybe have a certificate from a technical college, an associate's degree versus a bachelor's degree, all the way on up, what's out there? What opportunities are available?
Yeah, one thing we talk about a lot from education and training is you'll hear the word pathways described, right? And so I like to think of it that way as well. You can get on the interstate, and there's lots of exits to get off the interstate, and they all have a destination. So I'd say in terms of careers, and I'm not ranking these at all, I'm simply ordering them as number of years of education, for example, and that doesn't mean that that's in an ascending order. So you might choose to finish high school and find an apprenticeship program to join. As it turns out, apprenticeship programs train you or pay you to learn the job. Usually it's 18 to 24 months, and as you complete your training, you're doing that at your place of business, and they are paying you to do that learning with the expectation that when you finish the training, you work there. So that's the benefit to them. You might finish your high school education and decide that a trade school is appropriate for you. Maybe it's a 9 to 12-month program in welding or machining or some other trade skill that will make you valuable to many employers across the United States. Both those examples are ones that Suresh and I know quite well. Or you might decide community college. That's how I got started. I came, like Joan, from a very small high school in southeastern Kansas. It was all wheat farms, and my whole high school had 120 kids in it, and that's grades 9 through 12, right? So I wasn't quite ready to go to a 50,000 student university. That felt a little off to me. So I started at community college, and it turned out that I just stayed on the interstate for a real long time. I didn't get off until I had my PhD. That doesn't mean that that's the only solution to a great career. You might finish your 2-year associate's degree and turn that into a career in manufacturing, because that's what we do, or other discipline. You might finish there and decide to go on to a 4-year degree and finish that, and so on. Graduate school is an option. But the barrier that I'd like to try to break down is that if you don't continue your education, you're not as successful. You're not smart. There's no way for you to support a family. That's nonsense. There are millions of unfilled manufacturing jobs in the U.S. right now, waiting for you to come take that job. You just need to get the training that enables you to have the skill set to complete the activities that are requested.
Thank you. I can build on some of the things what Tony and John talked about it with reference to how to prepare yourself for what people are looking for. And I would recommend, as you're going through school or community college, the ability to work in a real atmosphere, real industry, and getting some hands-on experience will help. And there are many companies are interested in hiring when you're learning also, like apprenticeship program, and also ability to work on some of the skills like welding. So I'll give you one example. Around East Tennessee, one of my colleagues I used to work with them, he actually took high school welding classes. So essentially, as he was taking the class, the welding instructor inspired them. And also I'm biased, I'm from Fellow of American Welding Society. So he actually learned the technique of how to weld and become a certified welder with his colleague. And they both depart. One went to community college, one went to the traditional 4-year college, but they kept working on their profession. They used to have a small company on their own, and they went on. The storyline ends right now here, where these two students actually co-own a additive manufacturing aerospace company right now. And they are actually, I will call it pseudo millionaires already. So that means you can see that the trajectory, the pathway you take need not be as straight like the way you are told also. Be always open to taking up the job was offered to you. Don't say no, just go and see what does it involve, learn along the way. I'll stop.
One of the things I think Joan mentioned earlier is that the careers in these specific industries and fields are kind of ever changing and rapidly so, that the jobs of today weren't around when we were all in high school and college, and that the jobs of 10, maybe 15 years from now aren't around today. So how do students keep up? Are students going to go get trained in something that's going to be outdated in 5 years? Or you're obviously all still working in this field. You're a few years out of college now. So how do students keep up? What does that look like? What are the jobs of tomorrow that these students may be working in?
Well, I'll say that I think that by nature, going into some of these careers in the STEM fields at large, it makes you a utility infielder, to use the baseball term. You can go and do lots of different things. And I think if you heard from Suresh and Tony and myself, our careers have changed and morphed over the years. Where I was working in a forensic science lab, and I'm over here helping these students and faculty engaged in science at large. And it's the toolkit that you learn in any of these, whether it's an apprenticeship program like Tony mentioned, or all the way up through a PhD, you're learning tools, and those tools in the STEM fields really do apply in lots of different ways. So you're never obsolete. The jobs may change and the titles may change and evolve. The technologies that get used to do the job might change pretty significantly and pretty rapidly. But as long as you've got a great toolkit that you're building in high school all the way up, the things you learn in high school are very different from the things that I learned in high school, and that they're helping you build into these careers and make you that utilitarian that can do lots of different things.
I have one word, how we all keep it. We have to continuously learn. It's a lifelong learning process. There is no such thing called we finished learning, and we have to continuously learn. And that's a trait I believe we all have to follow, irrespective of whatever the career. So, because the world changes quickly, rapidly around us. So. And I'll give you an example. I'm learning now machine learning and AI, which I don't know what it takes. It's very difficult. I have a book here. I'll show you. And anyway, so that's what we have to do, continuously learn.
Suresh has better props than me and Tony do. And I didn't have any. Tony even showed me up on his prop.
We've recorded, this is like our 31st one of these, and by far the most props. So this is exciting.
Yes, I can tell you, Suresh and I are colleagues at the University of Tennessee. We do research together. And the fact is that over the past several weeks, as we've embarked on this research effort in a really cool process, it's called friction stir additive manufacturing. So imagine that I have a pin that rotates really fast, and I'm pushing a piece of metal through that rotating pin, and then I press that metal against a plate. Well, because it's rotating really fast, there's friction. Just like when I rub my hands together, there's enough frictional heat to cause that metal to deform and flow through the pin, and we can print parts with it. Well, that's not a brand new technology, but the application is new. And so many times, Suresh and I have found an academic paper from a journal and shared it with one another. And we read it, and I see, oh, that's what so-and-so did, and they learned this, and that helps refine my thinking about the process, so we decide what we're going to try. That's no different than the continuous learning that Suresh just described. It's just part of our culture and how we arrange our days and weeks.
And this is close to my heart. I do a lot of experiments in my kitchen too. And in fact, what Tony said, you could try it in your own kitchen. Get plasticine material, that Play-Doh, and put it on one and try to take with a spoon and try to stir it. And you see how the Play-Doh moves around. And that's what we are doing in metals right now, making it like a Play-Doh to one. So play with that. It's actually a fun experiment to do.
Well, the experiment I do in my kitchen involves food, and it doesn't usually turn out very good. So there's a different opportunity for tonight. So I'm asking you, look into your crystal ball. Like, what's a job that students may be doing 10 years from now that doesn't even exist today?
That's a good question. So I'm going to pause for a moment to think about it. 10 years from now, that's a good time scale. Okay, so go ahead, Tony.
Well, I can give you a generic answer within the context of advanced manufacturing. So as advanced manufacturing capabilities evolve, and they continually do, the landscape changes, the direction we normally go is to more automated operation. So you mentioned, World War II and the history around that in the Oak Ridge area. So at that time, a lot of parts were machined, but they were all done manually. There were men and women rotating wheels to move tools to produce parts. We don't do that anymore. Right now, it's computer controlled. So as we move toward automated operation, the jobs change. They transition away from like today's continuous machine monitoring, where I'm watching what's happening all the time, maybe to occasional machine interventions, where those workers now spend their time, instead of focused on the machine, focusing on new opportunities in automation and new equipment designs, right? The machine needs to look different to be more automated and so on. So I think that's a direction that we'll see 10 years from now that will make things look unrecognizable.
So, so since 10 years from now, I get an academic freedom to speculate. So with that, let me kind of, okay. So already Tony indicated that the tools will be available for that. So one of the dream I have is that every citizen of our country should be able to manufacture whatever they want at their home at the cost affordable to them also. So it may be looking like a dream, but however, we can do that if we can democratize some of the tools which we are developing here in our national lab or university, and also the students who are listening to them. And I want them to think about it, like, if I have this tool, what can I do? And if you're walking around your community and you see a problem and you see how to fix it, don't wait for somebody else to come and fix. Go see how you can pull your teams together, walk into a 3D printing lab in your school, or ask a MDF in ORNL to help you out. Figure out a way to solve it, because our problem scope is going to be expanding so much. We need all of you to think about solutions, because we don't have solutions for everything. So that's what my aspirational goal I would give for students. And think about it. You are part of the solution, and we need you also.
And I'll finish by actually using an example beyond manufacturing. All of the students who are listening today have spent at least the last almost 2 years now, because it was March when everything kind of shut down, dealing with a pandemic, whether it was the technology to continue on with your schooling, whether it was you getting sick or family members getting sick, trying to understand what this new thing was. When you look at just what happened in the pandemic, just as one area, when Suresh talks about problems in your neighborhood, in your community, you can look at how something like that touches so many different areas of science and technology, from manufacturing new vaccines and getting those vaccines now in a distribution network out to people, thinking about cures that help sick people get better from these kinds of diseases. And there's always new diseases evolving. COVID-19 won't be the last one. For the medical professionals now that are getting overwhelmed sometimes by the number of patients they're seeing, how do we make their work better? And that goes everything from the engineering to having more people in the medical world that can help treat people. So you start thinking about just one problem that society has like that, how many different areas of science and technology that touches, and how many new opportunities there are for students who are going into those careers to look at just that one problem. Now think about all the other things that even got mentioned: manufacturing, AI, and automation, and new technologies. All these different areas now all take people that use STEM and use the techniques and theories and ideas that are being developed in STEM fields. So I'm not even going to give you one specific job, but I just wanted to use that as an example of something that just is that touches all areas of society in our life. Policy, politics, as we know. So you see it touching every facet of really our everyday life. That's what I think is really important to think about. If you have a career in these areas, there's no telling what kind of impact you can have on the people in your local community and your family, and then well beyond that. So.
Yeah, great answer. It's probably really unfair of me to ask for one specific job, right? So that was really good. So we end, we're getting close on time. And so we end these, all of these virtual community service webinars here with 3 questions. So I don't know if anyone wants to volunteer to go first, but the first question is for everyone: what is one thing that you know now that you did not know when you were in college that you wish that you had?
I'll go first because it's one that I always use with students, and that is, I thought I really had to know exactly what I wanted to do when I grew up, and exactly what I wanted to be when I got out of college. And the truth is, I think I was way better off not knowing what exactly I wanted to do, because I would have never ended up in the job that I'm in now. I think it was Suresh who said, be open to things that come at you. And my path was not a straight line, and it sounds like Tony's and Suresh's probably weren't either, but it certainly was being open and not knowing what I wanted to do was a huge thing for me. And if I had known that, I would have relaxed a lot about the fact that I was just unsure and I didn't know where my life was going to take me. And that all worked out, and it will work out for all of you too. So that's the big thing I always say to students.
Tony?
It's so closely aligned with what Joan said. I would say there's plenty of time to work. You feel like you need to get into your job and get going. It's like 35 years. Like, trust me, there's lots of time. So focus on learning and exploring new topics during this time in your life. It's rare that you'll have that opportunity again.
So in my case, if I had to go back, and of course, it's a trajectory we all take. We don't know where we will end up. But one thing which appeals to my heart is that being at service to others. So sometimes I wish I had paid more attention to biology, and because that's where a lot of solutions exist, and then went down that path and became like a physician or doctor and serve others. And that has been one of the things I keep talking about it also. But however, even now I do serve students and they change the world. So that's the part which sometimes I think, because looking back at it, you can say, well, I wish I could have done that. So
if you had one piece of advice, you guys kind of talked a little bit about it, but just one piece of advice, maybe different than what you just mentioned, what would it be for students?
I can go first. Don't be afraid of failure.
Perfect.
That's it.
Really good. Joan?
I was to say, don't be afraid to talk to people. Suresh briefly mentioned mentors in terms of one of the mentors that made a big difference in his world. But all of these adults like that you see here, we're happy to talk to students, and that goes probably for just about every other adult and person in different jobs that you might be interested in your life. And I know some of my most important decisions in life are influenced by people I talk to who are really, really great and willing to give of their time. And most people are. They love to talk about their careers. They love to talk about how they got there. And so, don't be afraid when they say, it's okay if you email me and ask questions. They really mean that. They're not just saying that. So please take advantage of that and don't feel like you're imposing on them to ask those questions. Definitely take advantage of the people in your life that want to help.
So here's something you can talk to people about. Focus on connecting what you're learning in the classroom to the world around you. Don't isolate classroom from world. They're the same thing. For example, how was your plastic water bottle made? What happens after you put it in the recycling bin? Right? That right there is key. That's manufacturing. That is hardcore manufacturing, those efforts. Okay.
Yeah, really great advice. So final question. This is always my favorite question because the responses are always so varied. So if you could do anything in the world besides what you're doing right now, if you had to pick something else, the dream job outside of your current dream job, what would you be doing? What would you choose?
I've got this one.
Okay, go ahead, Tony.
No question in my mind about this. I'd be the lead singer for a 90s rock band. But that's probably not going to happen. So I'll just stick with what I got right here.
The dream has died already. I could say I'm a runner and I marathon, as a hobby. I would just run and train and go run marathons all over the world and hopefully get paid to do it. That'd be great. I enjoy that.
Okay, so this is what do you? Okay, I want to be like an actor in action movie like Keanu Reeves, and we'll go into Matrix Reloaded or whatever the movie it is.
Excellent.
That's great, Suresh.
I mean, Jen, it sounds like you actually kind of do yours. Mine would be a professional golfer, and I don't have the ability to do that. So the rest of us, I guess, can just keep dreaming. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. I know I've learned a lot. This is not a topic that I am over the top familiar with. And so I appreciate you all being here today, sharing your experience, sharing your advice. Any final words from anybody? But if not, thanks so much.
Thank you for letting us be here. This was great.
Thank you very much, Graham, for giving us time to relive our student days too. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been
Thank
fun.
you. And if students have any questions, hopefully there's a way for them to reach out to us too. We're happy to talk to them.
Yes, we can do that. Excellent. Well, thank you all so much, and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, team. Bye then.
Bye.
Thank you for watching this installment of the Tennessee Achieves Virtual Community Service webinar. Your attendance will be automatically recorded and your 1 hour of community service is being credited to you. Please click Submit on this screen to ensure that your attendance is recorded for you. For this community service opportunity, you will not need to complete the community service form. We hope you found this opportunity to be engaging and informative. Please watch more of this series by visiting www.tnachieves.org. We hope you have a great day. Thank you.